Have you noticed that certain guns are starting to vanish from shelves again? If you've walked into a gun shop lately, maybe you saw bare wall hooks, long lines, or one box per customer signs over the ammo bins. Sound familiar? That's because fear-based buying is making a comeback. But unlike past surges, this wave is more focused. It's not a blind panic across the board, it's calculated, targeted, and driven by a deeper sense of urgency. We saw a similar rush back in 2020, when the pandemic, riots, and political chaos made Americans realize just how fragile normal could be. But this time, something different is driving people to stock up. So what's sparking this renewed rush for firearms and ammunition? And what does it mean for the gun industry, your local dealers, and the future of firearm ownership in the United States? That's what I'm breaking down today. We're going to take a close look at how gun sales have surged and dipped over the past few years, what's behind this new round of strategic stockpiling, and which calibers and platforms are vanishing fastest. Whether you're a long-time gun owner, a newcomer, or just trying to make sense of the market, stay with me. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear sense of what's really going on. To figure out what's happening now, we have to rewind a few years. Before 2020, the gun market was actually shrinking. Sales slumped under the Trump administration, which the industry often called the Trump slump. With fewer folks worried about gun control, fewer were buying. A lot of manufacturers struggled just to stay afloat. Then came the pandemic. In early 2020, fear kicked into high gear. First, it was empty shelves at the grocery store. Then the same thing hit the gun shops' lines around the block, sold-out cases, and a historic spike in purchases. And it didn't stop there. After the unrest in May 20 and the collapse of public trust in law enforcement, people started taking security into their own hands. By the year's end, nearly 40 million background checks had been processed, and around 21 million firearms were sold. What's wild is that nearly 40% of those sales were to first-time buyers. But like every boom, the bubble had to ease. By 2023, demand had cooled, though it never dropped back to pre-pandemic levels. Instead, the market found a new normal, hovering around 20 to 30% higher than it was in 2019. For a while, things seemed stable. But now, the numbers are jumping again, not everywhere, but in certain areas and categories. This isn't the same blind rush we saw before. It's selective and intentional. Folks aren't just buying because it's available, they're buying because they feel like time is running out. So how do we know this isn't just a fluke? Well, let's talk numbers. FBI background check data from late 2023 shows a sharp uptick. In October alone, checks rose by over 7% compared to September. That's almost quadruple the usual monthly change. And this isn't happening evenly across the map. Some places like Washington State, which saw their slowest gun sales in over a decade, are now reporting packed counters and lines at the register. Southern border states are seeing it too. One dealer in Texas told me, "We've seen waves since 2020, but this is something else. Folks are walking and asking for specific models by name." This spike isn't limited to physical stores either. Over the last 3 months, online searches for terms like best home defense gun and upcoming ammo shortage have jumped over 40%. Ammo vendors are reporting volume that mirrors the early days of the pandemic. But the part that really stands out, the type of customer has changed. More shops are seeing people who've never owned a gun before. They're not into collecting. They're not range regulars. They walk in saying, "I never thought I'd need a firearm, but I do now." That marks a serious cultural shift. This isn't about politics or collectors flooding the market. This is everyday Americans deciding that protecting their homes is no longer optional. That tells me this trend has staying power. Now that we know fear-based buying is picking up again, the big question is, why now? The pandemic is over. The streets are calm. It's not an election year. So why are people gearing up like we're on the edge of something big? The truth is, there's no single reason. It's a combination of factors coming together to create a perfect storm. If there's one thing that consistently spikes firearm sales, it's the threat of new regulation. Even if Washington isn't pushing sweeping federal bans at the moment, the action at the state level is heating up fast. States like Illinois, Colorado, and Washington are all rolling out tighter restrictions on guns and accessories. And when that happens, people move fast. They rush to pick up whatever they think could be banned next. We've seen it happen with AR pattern rifles, with pistol braces, and now it's spreading to standard capacity magazines, home defense shotguns, and compact handguns. And then there's Project 2025, a highly controversial political roadmap that's stirring up serious concerns. The White House might not be endorsing it outright, but even hearing rumors of sweeping Second Amendment changes sends buyers into action, either to prepare for a potential ban or because they believe the current leadership is about to flip the script on gun rights. Let's talk about what might be the biggest driver behind this entire surge. People simply do not feel secure anymore. Recent polling shows that nearly 88% of Americans are concerned about crime rates going up. And close to half of all current gun owners admit they're carrying their firearms more frequently than they used to. This is not just some kind of overreaction. Violent incidents have been rising in major metro areas. Between home break-ins, carjackings, and random street violence, a lot of folks are rethinking how vulnerable they really are. I've spoken to a number of gun shop operators lately, and the message is consistent. People aren't buying just for target shooting or weekend plinking anymore. They're purchasing because they truly believe they may have to use that firearm in a real-world defensive situation. That's a huge psychological shift from where we were even 5 years ago. There's another layer here that a lot of people miss. It's about confidence, or rather, the lack of it, in government and law enforcement agencies. A study from Cambridge University recently found that new firearm owners are far more likely to mistrust official institutions and embrace the mindset of self-reliance. This isn't about being part of some militia or survivalist group. It's about regular folks deciding they can't afford to count on anyone else when it comes to their safety. We saw this mindset take root during the chaos of 2020. Sure, it started with the pandemic, but it evolved into something more when public order began to break down. That same sentiment is back in a big way today. When people feel like there's no cavalry coming, they take matters into their own hands, and for many, that starts with buying a gun. So that brings us to a critical question. What exactly are people buying this time around? It's not a free-for-all like we saw in previous runs. Buyers today are much more focused. The most in-demand handguns right now are compact semi-automatics, chambered in 9mm. Firearms like the Glock 19, the Sig Sauer P365, and the Smith & Wesson M and P9M 2.0 are disappearing from gun store shelves almost as fast as they arrive. And that makes total sense. These pistols are ideal for concealed carry, are typically compliant with most state laws, and they strike a great balance between capacity, reliability, and ease of use. A number of shop owners I've interviewed said that when these models arrive, they're gone in a matter of hours, sometimes even less. There's also been a strong uptick in interest around defensive shotguns, especially tactical models suited for home protection. Classics like the Mossberg 590, the Remington 870, and the Benelli M4 are being snatched up quickly. These scatterguns offer formidable stopping power, intuitive operation, and they're perceived by many buyers as the best tool to defend their home. What it's telling is that even folks who already own a handgun are coming back to add a shotgun to their defensive lineup. That shows me this isn't just another round of fear-fueled buying, it's strategic decision-making. Modern sporting rifles are also back in focus. AR-15 style platforms and even A-pattern rifles are getting renewed interest, particularly in regions where new legislation is being proposed. Buyers remember all too well what happened during the shortages of 2020 when those rifles became nearly impossible to find, and they're not willing to take that chance again. Ammo availability is once again becoming a sore spot. While we're not quite back to the extreme levels of scarcity we saw in 2020, certain calibers are drying up fast. 9mm remains the #1 seller for handguns, followed closely by .45 ACP and .357 Magnum for revolvers. For shotguns, 12-gauge buckshot is flying off the shelves. Prices are trending upward, and more stores are starting to impose purchase limits per customer. Something else that's worth noting, people are investing more in firearm accessories than ever before. Sales of red dot sights, tactical lights, holsters, and secure gun storage solutions are booming. That tells me a lot of the folks who bought their first gun in 2020 are now upgrading their setups. It's no longer just about owning a firearm, it's about having the gear and training to use it effectively. The face of American gun ownership has changed in a huge way over the past 5 years. If you still imagine a stereotypical gun owner as an older man living in the countryside, that picture is outdated. Since 2020, over 26 million people in the United States have become first-time firearm owners. That's more than the population of the entire state of Florida. And what's really surprising is who these new buyers are. Women have led the charge in a big way. Female gun ownership has shot up by over 170% since the early 90s, and a massive part of that growth has come in the past few years. These women aren't just picking up small-frame revolvers, they're buying full-size pistols, tactical shotguns, and AR-15 rifles. Many are also enrolling in training programs to learn how to handle their weapons with skill and confidence. Gun ownership among African Americans has grown significantly too. The National African American Gun Association now has over 40,000 members, and a large portion of that group is made up of women. In fact, Black women are currently the fastest growing segment of new gun owners in the country. That marks a huge cultural shift from where things stood even a decade ago. Hispanic and Asian American ownership is rising as well. Hispanic gun ownership has jumped 33% over the last 6 years, while Asian American ownership climbed 43% during the pandemic years. Here's what all that means. Firearm ownership in America is no longer a rural, conservative trend. Today, buyers come from urban neighborhoods, suburban communities, and every walk of life. And the majority of these new owners are not just impulse buyers. Nearly half go on to seek professional instruction after making their first purchase, and almost 1 in 4 buy a second firearm within a year. That tells me this is not a flash in the pan. These people are serious about protecting themselves and their families, and once someone makes that decision, it tends to stick. That's why I believe this new wave of strategic, purpose-driven buying is not going to fade away anytime soon. The landscape has changed, and it's changed for good. Gun makers have taken a hard lesson to heart after the roller coaster of the last buying surge. Back in 2020, manufacturers scrambled to boost output to meet the sudden spike in demand. But when things cooled off during 2022 and 2023, many of those companies found themselves overloaded with product they couldn't move. This time around, they're being much more measured. Instead of cranking out everything under the sun, they're sticking to the firearms that continue to sell reliably compact 9mm pistols, defensive shotguns built for the home, and select AR-15 rifles. The idea is to avoid another inventory glut that could hurt them when the market inevitably tightens up. Ammunition producers are also adjusting their strategy. Even though firearm imports have dropped by around 10% compared to last year, ammunition imports have actually increased by 9%. That says a lot. It shows manufacturers are banking on steady demand, especially for expendables like ammo. The numbers hint at a market shift. People may not be buying as many new guns, but they are investing in training, practice, and upgrading what they already own. More range time, more courses, more gear. Retailers are making smarter moves, too. Many gun shops have adopted a leaner inventory model, what's called a just-in-time system. That means they're not sitting on a mountain of stock anymore. They're ordering based on what's hot at the moment, keeping their shelves flexible and their bottom lines protected. That's part of the reason why you'll see a model like a Glock 19 hit the shelf in the morning and be gone before lunch. Shops only receive a handful of units at a time, and demand is outpacing supply. You're also seeing changes in how guns are being sold. Some stores now have text alert systems or email notifications that let buyers know the moment a shipment lands. Others are setting up VIP programs giving priority access to regular customers who've built a relationship with the shop. It's a delicate balance. Retailers and manufacturers are walking a tightrope. They can't afford to flood the shelves and tank the market again, but they also don't want to miss out on eager buyers ready to spend. That careful management tells me something important. This is not just another temporary buying craze. The entire industry from top to bottom is recalibrating for a longer-term surge in demand. That leads us to the big question: is this a short burst, or are we in the middle of a permanent transformation in the American gun market? Truth is, even the experts are split. One camp argues that the market is nearing saturation. After all, tens of millions of firearms were sold between 20 and 2023. That's a huge wave of new owners. Some believe there just isn't enough room left for explosive growth. But others take a different view. Research from Cambridge University shows that once someone buys their first firearm, the odds go up dramatically that they'll purchase more over time. And it's not just about buying extra guns, it's about getting better. More training, more range time, better holsters, optics, and safes. That kind of long-term engagement points to a different kind of growth, one that's deeper rather than broader. Then there's the political factor. Traditionally, gun sales slow down under Republican leadership and spike when Democrats are in power, driven by concerns over potential restrictions. But right now, that pattern is starting to break. Even with mixed leadership at the federal level, gun sales remain high. That's largely due to state-level efforts to pass tighter laws, which can drive local buying frenzies. All it takes is one high-profile crime or policy proposal, and the sales floodgates open again. We can't ignore the economic pressure either. Historically, when financial uncertainty increases, whether it's inflation, layoffs, or a volatile stock market, defensive firearm buying tends to rise. People want tangible security. In times of instability, a well-made firearm becomes more than just a tool, it becomes a form of insurance. Here's my take. This is not just a flash in the pan. We are witnessing a deeper cultural shift. More Americans than ever before now view firearm ownership as essential, not optional. The industry sees it, retailers see it, and gun owners certainly feel it. So if you're watching this and wondering, should I be buying now or should I wait it out? The answer is going to depend on your circumstances. But let me be clear, this is not the time for panic buying. This is the time for smart planning. If you're considering a firearm purchase, don't grab whatever happens to be left on the shelf. Make a deliberate choice. Look for reliability, simplicity, and practicality. Compact 9mm pistols are still the top recommendation for everyday carry and personal defense. If your main concern is home protection, then a pump-action 12-gauge shotgun like the Mossberg 590 or Remington 870 makes a lot of sense. And if you live in a state that's floating new restrictions, now may be your last best chance to pick up that AR-15 before it gets harder or impossible to do so legally. Here's one common mistake I've seen over and over again. People drop a bunch of money on a gun and then skip the training. Let me tell you, owning a gun doesn't automatically make you safer. Knowing how to use it under pressure, in a stressful situation, that's what matters. A defensive handgun class will do more for your personal safety than a second or third firearm ever could. Get yourself into a local course. Learn how to draw, move, shoot, and make decisions under stress. That's how you build confidence and capability. You should also be thinking about storage. If you're adding firearms to your household, that means developing a solid security plan. That does not mean locking everything up so tightly you can't access it when you need it. It means getting fast access safes for your carry pistol, securing long guns properly, and being extra cautious if you've got kids in the home. Responsible gun ownership means making sure your weapons don't end up in the wrong hands. This is also the time to build your support network. If you're new to gun ownership, connect with experienced folks. Join a local range or shooting league. Tap into the growing Second Amendment community in your area. Learning from others accelerates your growth and helps you avoid common pitfalls. You don't have to do it alone. There's a reason all of this is happening right now. People see the world shifting, and they're responding the only way they know how, by getting prepared. Not out of fear, but out of foresight. And the people who are going to be ready for what's next are the ones who take that responsibility seriously. So what's the bottom line here? Yes, fear buying is back, but it's evolved. This time, it's not just about grabbing what's available in a panic. People are being thoughtful. They're buying with purpose. 9mm pistols, tactical shotguns, AR-15 rifles. The shelves are emptying fast. Ammunition is becoming scarce again. But the biggest change? Gun ownership no longer looks like it used to. It's not just middle-aged men in rural counties. Women are leading the charge. Minority communities are arming up. Urban and suburban residents are now some of the most engaged, best-trained firearm owners in the country. And the core drivers behind all this political instability, rising crime, and eroding public trust are not fading. They're intensifying. That means this trend is not likely to fade anytime soon. If anything, it's just getting started. If you already own firearms, this is the moment to stock up on ammunition. Book that advanced training course and refine your personal defense plan. If you're just getting started, go in with a plan, get something reliable, get trained, and get connected. Now I want to hear from you. Are you seeing empty shelves in your area? Have you noticed more first-time shooters at your local range? Drop your experiences in the comments below. And if this breakdown helped you, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more updates on firearm trends, defensive tips, and the latest from the Second Amendment front. Stay safe, stay informed, and as always, stay ready.